All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. I'm Janelle Rainey, Head of Product Marketing here at Zoom, and I'll be moderating today's event. Just a few housekeeping items. First, go ahead and add your questions to the Q&A panel. And we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. We are recording this webinar and we will send it out later. We're also using closed captioning and interpreters today. We are once again excited to provide you with another weekly update on all that Zoom's been able to accomplish as part of our 90-day plan and continued commitment and focus on security and privacy. Today, we're going to have Eric, our founder and CEO, provide a progress update. Then we'll hear from Max Krohn, our head of security engineering, who will discuss the updated cryptography design for end-to-end encryption. And then Oded Gall, our chief product officer, will walk through recent updates to our platform. Finally, we'll hear from Gary Sorrentino, who will provide an update on our CISO Council. Gary is the Global Deputy CIO for Zoom as part of the Global CIO Office. And lastly, we'll open it up for Q&A. So welcome, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Janelle, and thank you all for your time today. And to start things off, I wanted to provide an update on our end-to-end encryption feature. Since releasing the draft design of Zoom's end-to-end encryption on May 22, we have engaged with civil liberties organizations and our Chief Information Security Officer Council, child safety advocates, encryption experts, and government representatives, and also our own users, and also others as well, to gather their feedback on this feature. We have also explored new technologies to enable us to offer end-to-end encryption to all tiers of users. Following those conversations, we released an updated E2EE design on GitHub today, which marks the next chapter of our end-to-end encryption development. So I'd encourage you to read it. We are also pleased to share that following those conversations and analysis, we have identified a new path forward that balances the legitimate right of all users to protect their privacy. This new path will enable us to offer end-to-end encryption as an advanced add-on feature for all of our users around the globe, free and paid, while maintaining the ability to prevent and fight abuse on our platform. So this feature will be optional and will give free users the chance to have end-to-end encryption or not, depending on their own circumstances. With that, I will now turn it over to our head of security engineer, Max, to tell you more. Thank you.
And thank you, Eric. Before I jump into end-to-end encryption, I want to make clear that Zoom has used and continues to use encryption technology on its platform for all users. AES 256-bit GCM encryption, which is one of the most secure encryption standards used today, is currently enabled system-wide and is available to all users, both free and paid. So on to end-to-end encryption. Today, we released an updated EDE design on GitHub. We also announced our decision to provide the option of end-to-end encryption to all users, free and paid, around the globe at no additional cost. To make this possible, free and basic users seeking access to end-to-end encryption will participate in a one-time process that will prompt for additional information, such as verifying a phone number via text message. Many leading companies perform similar steps on account creation to reduce the mass creation of abusive accounts. We are confident that this risk-based authentication process, combined with our current mix of tools, will enable us to continue to prevent and fight abuse on our platform. In terms of next steps, we plan to begin early beta of the end-to-end encryption feature in July 2020. We are grateful to those who have provided their input on our design, both technical and philosophical. This is a complex, ongoing process. We encourage everyone to continue to share their views so that we may do as much good as possible for the most people possible. And with that, I'll turn it over to Oded.
Thank you, Max. I'll now talk through some recent updates. Last week, we made several enhancements to our features, including adding a setting whereby account owners and admins can disable logging into Zoom with an email address and password. The ability for account owners and admins to configure whitelisted domains for bypassing the waiting room. If a user is logged into their Zoom account with an email address at whitelisted domains, they will bypass the waiting room and be joined directly into the meeting. Adding Zoom setting that allows account owners and admins to disable participants' annotation, so only the participant who is screen sharing can annotate. This setting is available at the account, group, and user level. We've brought back the ability to unmute all in meetings with less than 200 participants. The ability to delete comments in the Q&A queue for webinars. And for Zoom Phone, we set account level data retention policy so that account owners and admins can set the amount of time that Zoom Phone user data is retained in the system, including call logs, call recordings, voicemail recordings, and transcripts. As a reminder, for paid customers, we will be requiring all future meetings to have either waiting room or passwords turned on at a minimum. Of course, you can also have both enabled. This will come into effect starting July 19th, at which time, if you have not made a selection, Zoom will set the defaults as follows. Meetings that have been scheduled before July 19th that don't already have a password tied to the meeting will have waiting room enabled by default. Existing user accounts who set up meetings using a personal meeting ID or PMI, these meetings will have waiting rooms enabled. New user accounts who set up meetings using a PMI, both passwords and waiting rooms will be turned on. And for new starter meetings that are scheduled after July 19th, passwords will be the default setting. Admins are provided with a choice of changing the defaults or locking waiting rooms or password selections for the account, group, or user level for any meeting type. We will also be updating the word password to passcodes for meeting access. This was feedback from our CISO council. Passwords are tied to user logins and should never be shared. Passcodes are meant to be shared with your meetings participants only. And now I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Oded. So Zoom officially launched our CISO Council in April, which is a key initiative under the company's 90-day plan to bolster privacy and security initiatives across the platform. The expectations of the CISO councils were outlined as follows: to serve as voice of the client. As Zoom continues to experience new use cases and opens up itself to new and different types of users, particularly during the pandemic, the CISO council members bring us fresh thinking, new ideas, and providing us with insights into how the security of the product will need to function and which controls are required by the various different types of organizations and industries. They provide us guidance, advice, and prioritization on our security and privacy efforts and enhancements. Our council is comprised of some of the most well-respected CISOs in the world. Their collaboration on this council has been an effective way for Zoom to ensure it's implementing security and privacy best practices. And our council members are going to join us for up and coming webinars, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so let's talk about the council. Zoom CISO Client Council comprised of 36 of the leading CISOs across the tech, financial services, retail, professional services, government, education, healthcare, manufacturing, communication, biotech, pharma, and agricultural industries, and growing. We wanted it to be diverse. And they include CISOs from such great companies as HSBC, Santa Fe, Arizona State University, and SentinelOne. Since the council was formed in early April, we've had 3 very productive meetings. Our first meeting in April, we conducted an in-depth review of the company's 90-day security plan. It was a very lively conversation. A few weeks later, we focused on spotlighting some of the features that Zoom has since rolled out. The data routing feature that enables users to control which data center region their real-time meeting is routed through. Meeting authentication options, and you heard Odette talk about part of that. And the reported user feature for meeting host and co-host to easily flag users who are misusing the platform to Zoom's trust and safety team. At the end of May, our meeting focused on the company's plan for end-to-end encryption, and we had a great conversation with Max. However, we changed it around a little bit now. We brought the product owners in, and we discussed enhanced password settings, and again, the reported user function. And thank you, Odette. They're going to love that we now call it passcode. These meetings have been moved to a monthly cadence, and we look very forward to meeting them all again at the end of June. As you can see, the CISO Council has proven to be a success. And in an effort to extend this type of programming to most of our customers, we created what we call CISO roundtables. CISO roundtables are really designed to give clients and prospects an opportunity to meet with Zoom CISO and security team leaders to understand the measures we have taken and will do to ensure the security and privacy of the users and platforms. The CISO roundtables will provide everyone a detailed review of our 90-day plan and beyond. And these meetings are designed to be interactive discussions between Zoom securities teams and the company's customers and prospects. It is a strong focus on Q&A. All the participants are being encouraged to ask questions and join in the conversation. And to that end, I've capped it at 40 so all voices can be heard. So let's talk about up and coming roundtables. Over the summer in July and August, we're going to be divided between vertically focused and regionally focused. Vertically focused, we're going to focus on manufacturing, financial services, healthcare, life sciences and pharma, and higher ed. Regionally in the United States, we're going to do one in the Southeast. We're going to do another one on the East Coast. And then internationally, we're going to have a CISO roundtable in Germany, in the United Kingdom, France, and even in Australia. With that, I'll turn it back to Janelle.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. Before we jump into Q&A, I'd like to welcome back Brendan Idelson, our Chief Technology Officer, and Lynn Holland, our Deputy General Counsel, Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer. And with that, we will jump into the questions. Gary, we have one on acronyms. What is a CISO?
So a CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer and responsible for the security, sometimes risk, of a company's technology, infrastructure, applications.
Excellent. All right, Max, a few on the encryption design. Are you still accepting feedback on the engine design?
Yes. The right place to do that is on the GitHub repository that's been posted along with a blog and in the chat on this webinar. We got a lot of good feedback the last time. Some people spent a lot of time with the paper, gave it a really deep read, and had some great suggestions. And so until things are out the door, there's really no reason to cut off feedback. So we welcome and value all the feedback we've gotten and hope we'll get some more in the future. So definitely keep it coming.
Great. And what will the July 2020 early beta of end-to-end look like?
The first beta, we're really focusing on phase 1 as described in the paper. And for that, we're expecting there to be some small changes to the user interface. The most obvious one is the button in the schedule a meeting feature that enables end-to-end encryption. Once that button is enabled, as we described earlier, some features will be disabled. So for instance, in end-to-end encrypted meetings, it's impossible to call in on a phone. SIP access and H323 access won't work. So if you want your meeting to be end-to-end encrypted and you click that button, anyone who's joining the meeting on those other methods will not be allowed into the meeting. So that much is going to be visible. But otherwise, not much is going to be visible to users. We think one of the great promises of this technology is it's largely transparent and invisible to the people using it. And there will probably be some more decoration somewhere in the UI, which hasn't been worked out exactly to show if you're on the old, if you're on the existing enhanced encryption or the new end-to-end encryption, there'll be some way to see that in the UI. So those are going to be the biggest differences.
Great. Let's see. Joel's asking, what does end-to-end actually do, and how is it different than GCM encryption?
Sure. So basically, what we're going to be shipping is an improvement upon what's already there. So with the GCM encryption that the Zoom client already uses, there's an encryption key that's used to encrypt all streams between all participants to make sure that if anyone were to look at the stream, it would be indecipherable. The real question, though, is where does that key come from and who has access to it? In the current enhanced encryption system that's currently live on Zoom, that key is generated in Zoom's infrastructure and stays there in case other gateways, such as phone gateways or SIP gateways, need access to it during the meeting. In an end-to-end encrypted meeting, that encryption key is generated by the clients, by the participants of the meeting. And they use public key cryptography to exchange that key amongst each other. And so in that sense, it's impossible for entities within Zoom's infrastructure to gain access to the meeting, which I described as slightly a double-edged sword. If there were a bad actor working inside Zoom's infrastructure, they would therefore not be able to access the key, which means the meeting is more secure. But at the same time, there are plenty of legitimate uses for that key to be accessible in Zoom's infrastructure, like phone bridges. And so by the same token, the meeting key would not be available to those entities. So that's the difference. I think it's important to realize that these are complementary technologies. Once the key is established, then all the same AES GCM technology will be employed in meetings. But the real question in phase one and the subsequent phases of our proposal is how is that key being established? And that's what we're going to be changing with the end-to-end button in the July release, in the July beta, I should say.
Yeah, Janelle, just quickly to add on to what Max shared, the current, AES 256 GCM, that key, was not pre-generated. When meeting started, right, the key is generated in the memory. Every meeting has a different key. After the meeting is over, the key also is gone, right? Just want to clarify that.
Excellent. Let's see, if a meeting host turns on end-to-end, does that mean that every participant must also have end-to-end enabled? And if not, what happens when a user without end-to-end joins the meeting?
Yeah, that's a great question. This technology will not be backwards compatible with prior versions of Zoom. So if a host enables end-to-end encryption, then every participant must have the most recent version that supports it, the first version that supports it, and otherwise they won't be able to join the meeting. So this won't be the same type of forced upgrade that we had with the GCM upgrade, because for those people not using end-to-end encryption, they won't be forced to upgrade their client. But those who do want to join an end-to-end encrypted meeting, who are not the host, will have to be on one of the new clients that supports it.
And then will free users be required to use end-to-end?
No. It doesn't make sense to require anyone to use it, because it does disable a lot of features that Zoom users currently depend upon, like cloud recording, translation, transcription, and phone bridges.
Great. So just to be clear, they all have GCM, but end-to-end is optional.
That's correct.
There's a question on how would I turn it on or off? I assume that would be in the admin settings, correct?
It would be in the settings panel where you configure a specific meeting. One of the requirements we're going to have is that once the meeting starts, the setting can't be changed. In phase 3, I believe we're going to have the ability to upgrade a meeting that wasn't started as end-to-end to one that can have it, so long as there are no dial-in or web or cloud-based features used in the meeting. But the place to enable it will be on the panel where you schedule the meeting.
Excellent. And will it be available for webinars?
Not in our initial release.
Okay. And then you did mention phases, and there are 4 phases to this rollout. Can you kind of expand on that and outline them?
Yeah, sure thing. So as we detail in the paper, at the end of phase one, there are still some potential avenues for attacking the system that we described. The biggest one is that it's a complicated problem to know who's actually in the meeting, who are the people you're talking to from a cryptographic perspective. And what that usually means is that all the participants have what's called a public key that allows them to access the meeting. And we have to ask ourselves, do we know that the participants that the right public keys are being exposed in the meeting that correspond to the participants that people see? That's a pretty complicated question. And so to actually solve it, it's going to take some more work. For phase two, we're working with SSO providers so that there could be a third-party independent validation of public keys and the way they correspond to users. So that'll definitely make the system more secure. And in phase three, we have a way to hold the Zoom system accountable to a pre-declared protocol, so that if ever there's any deviations from the way that public keys are distributed, then there's an immutable audit log that the deviation happened. And so this will be a really good way to discourage any sort of malicious tampering with the distribution of keys. So all these things I describe are more and more complicated attacks that you can mount against the system. In phase one, we do not say that we've solved all the attacks. We say we've solved the most practical attacks. And in phase two and three, we're going to solve the attacks that are even harder for the bad guys to pull off. And here the bad guys could be, bad actors inside the Zoom corporation. They could be bad actors on your local network. They can be all sorts of bad actors. I mean, obviously hypothetical bad actors, but the goal of security engineering is to imagine that the bad actors are in the worst possible places and to develop cryptographic and technological countermeasures against those bad actors if they ever turned out to exist. I can also say bad actors and cloud providers. There's obviously potential for hypothetical attacks in all these cases. And as we go through the different phases, the software will be better able to handle attacks by these more and more powerful adversaries.
Excellent. There's a question of, can you expand on the verification process for getting end-to-end?
Yeah, we're not going to say exactly what that is now because it's a work in progress, but we know there are lots of different signals that we can pull on that we think are valuable here. One is SMS-based authentication. Another, which we already have for enterprise and business tiers, is credit card billing in association with known entities. And I think the important thing is that we just want to prevent the people who are going out of their way to just be an anonymous abuser to not enable them to have that ability to escape some way to cut them off the system. So I think that's what we're going to be going towards. And there's tons of existing work in this type of authentication as it is. It's called risk-based authentication, and we're going to apply all the best industry standards and industry practices that we have access to.
Excellent. Does end-to-end work for users on a browser as well as the app?
We discussed that in the paper. It's a very complicated problem. Part of the problem is that when you install an app on your phone or a software package on your desktop, you have a pretty good assurance that it's the same binary, it's the same software that everyone else is running. For a web browser, you really don't have that possibility, and so therefore, it becomes entirely possible for a server that's not acting honestly to give users bad versions of the software to run in the browser for that meeting. And so it's very hard to get any good guarantees on any cryptography that's based on web technology. That being said, we mentioned in the paper that if the cryptography and the security features around browsers improve substantially, then we could revisit that decision.
Excellent. Kim is asking, will end-to-end be available on Zoom for government the same as it is for commercial?
I don't know the answer for sure, but I don't think there's a good reason why it shouldn't be. So let's say a tentative yes on that.
Okay. Let's see. Somebody said they're excited for the end-to-end encryption. Does Zoom plan to offer a white paper on this? We will, right now, I think if you go on GitHub, you can see the whole design that Max and team have crafted, but we will be updating our encryption once it becomes a product. Right now, it is simply a design. We'll be going into beta in July, but once it becomes generally available for everybody, that's generally when we would be updating that documentation for that. All right. Still a few more. I'm going to come back to you, Max. It's a few more,
Sure.
but there's some other questions in here too. Gary, can you talk about how would you join a roundtable?
As clients, you can talk to your sales reps. We'll have to figure out a way for prospects. I guess we'll put something on our website and announce them, people that can log in.
Okay. And will the CISO Council disband after the 90-day journey?
Absolutely not. Both the council and the roundtables will continue. The council right now is a 1-year term. So next April, we're looking to up another 35 of our clients to be on it. We already have people who have volunteered, and we'll continue the CISO roundtables as necessary.
Excellent. Eric, Sean is asking, beyond security, what keeps you up at night?
How to make sure our employees happy, and that's always number 1 thing. And also, ultimately, how to make sure our customer happy, right? It's just always like that. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, Dad. Danny's asking, how does the ability to disable the email or password for login enhancement actually work?
Brendan, do you want to take that?
Happy to take that one. So this feature is an option that we have under the security tab, where account administrators can basically turn on and off which login types are supported by their account. So for example, if you only want users to be able to log in using single sign-on, you can disable some of our other login types like email address and password. So this gives a lot of flexibility on what methods people can log in to your Zoom tenant.
All right. And then Scott is asking, when will we get concrete information on the password waiting room change coming on the 19th? So you have heard that mentioned here on the webinar. Emails will start rolling out this week. We will also have a FAQ posted on our support page and an infographic and some assets that you could use to then educate your end users about waiting rooms and passcodes and how those will work. So Scott, they are coming. Let's see. On breakout rooms, a question here for you, Oded. Are they coming to webinars?
Yeah, we do have a plan to add them to webinars, although the use case is a little bit different. So we'll see if it will work the same way or we'll have to find a different way. But overall, the answer is yes.
Okay. And can I share a screen to different breakout rooms? Brendan or Oded would like to talk about that. As a host, could I simultaneously share the same screen to
No,
different
you
breakout
cannot.
rooms?
Yeah.
Right. So, Eric, thank you. Right now, no, you cannot. You'd have to be in that breakout room to do that. And a third question on breakout rooms, can I set a timer for a breakout room? And I think that's also a great suggestion, something that we would think about building there. Let's see. Marigal has asked, has Giphy been restored to chat? It's not working in our meetings. Or did you want to talk about the Giphy?
Yeah, the Giphy is only available for outside of the meeting chat, a persistent chat, a Zoom chat. We are looking into bringing some of the features that we have in our persistent chat into the meeting, and we'll consider that in the future.
Great. And Robert's asking, what facilities are available to help students work in pairs in isolation from other pairs?
So I'm assuming you can use breakout room for that, if I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, that's what I would think too. It was probably the breakout rooms would be the best way to do that. You can separate a few people out. They're still in the meeting. They can come back into that same meeting with the whole group as well. We do that a lot in our bigger group meetings. A certain group will go in a breakout room, figure something out, and come back and tell the bigger team what they've decided. Joel is asking, can can you Zoom with someone in Australia with a free subscription to Zoom? And yes, you can.
There's no limitation.
Yes. Let's see. Will Zoom let me be between two groups? So group A is in Chile, group B is in the States, and I'll only be listening to group A and translating for group B while I'll be in my office somewhere else. This is from Patricia, who lives in Chile. And I believe right now, this is what would be explained through the simultaneous interpretation, which we're actually doing now. Oded, do you want to explain how that works?
Well, you have to switch between languages right now. So that's my understanding from the question. Maybe it's a new feature that they're asking if you can, have listen to both at the same time. I'm trying to understand exactly if that's the request.
Well, I think he's saying I'll be listening to group A and translating for group B. So right now we do have our interpreters on. They are listening to us and translating into a separate audio channel, which then you could select to listen to. So Patricia, if you have more questions about that, feel free to reach out. Let's see, Nancy's asking, will Zoom be developing a virtual waiting room that can be branded before a meeting or webinar starts? Instead of a small box that says, please wait, the webinar will begin soon.
Not necessarily a waiting room, but some kind of an opening. We have some level of customization today, and we're looking to enhance that in the future.
Let's see, is there a way to see how long someone's been in a waiting room? I'd like to know how long a patient has been waiting.
We don't have that today, but it's a good feature enhancement. We'll look into that.
Great. What is the status of accessibility compliance for Zoom clients?
We are compliant with several accessibility standards, and I would recommend going to our webpage that describes all of those standards that we comply with. And we can probably put that link in the chat so people can go and look it up.
Great. I think we probably do have the best accessibility compliance of anybody in the market. It's something we take very seriously. Is there any way for users to share documents for participants in a meeting without sharing a screen?
Yes, well, as part of the chat, you can actually upload files, and you can either choose a file from your computer, or you can actually use content management systems like Box, Dropbox, and Google Drive and OneDrive, and share those inside the meeting itself. It's not actually sharing the screen in that sense, but it will share a link to the file itself.
All right, Max, another one for you. Will there be fees to have the end-to-end encryption?
No, nope.
Right, so you're going to be making that available for free, and there's no additional fee for it. No add-on. Excellent. When scheduling a meeting that you know has a Polycom SIP video device will be joining, would you recommend not turning on end-to-end encryption?
Yeah, we don't know how to handle that. And it wouldn't, the Polycom SIP would not be able to join the meeting. So yes, you should not use EDE in that case. You should not click the little EDE button in the meeting schedule in that case.
I would say that you'll be able to use the Poly Zoom rooms that will support end-to-end encryption.
Right.
And Eric's asking, how does end-to-end relate to the streaming output? Can this also be end-to-end encrypted?
No, actually. And streaming output, I think we also cannot support that either. So any third party, services or devices like a Poly or any other hardware or streaming, if you turn on E2E, those features will not work.
And then Julie's asking, what kind of outcomes do bad actors want? Are they looking for financial gain, data mining? So kind of just hearing this term and what's the fear, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD, right? So, but what's real? What are they really going after?
Right. So I have to say that's a tricky one to answer because, bad actors comes in all stripes, sizes, shapes, and, motivations, just like the rest of the population. So What we are seeing though from meeting disruptions, we are seeing folks, bad actors, taking advantage again of public meeting IDs, publicly posted passwords, and meeting IDs to join as an unwelcome participant, as you all know, to join that way with those public links and post horrific stuff. They're posting in some cases inappropriate and awful illegal materials, and they're also posting racial harassment, racial epithets, really ugly stuff. So that seems to be you wouldn't gain any money from that. That would not necessarily be a way to enrich yourself as a bad actor by doing that. I think that is probably safe to say that that's to cause harm, disruption, psychological, upset, and so forth. But again, those are guesses to those motivations. Again, bad actors come with all kinds of different motivations and different different reasons for doing what they do. But certainly those are the types of meeting disruptions we're seeing, and that's my speculation as to why someone would do that.
Great. I think that was a good answer as to what it is. And I think the natural follow-up answer is like, what have we done to help prevent that? And, Oded, Brendan, there's Lynn, if you want to pipe in as well. But there's a lot of things that we have done, right?
Yeah, thanks, Janelle. That's a great point. Let me just kick that off. And of course, I, as always, invite Brendan and Oded to jump in if I've forgotten something or to add. But first of all, as many of you know, we've changed because historically we were a business-to-business platform and focused on the enterprise and business customers. Of course, those are entities, businesses that have oftentimes an IT professional or an IT department. So historically, as a business-to-business platform, an enterprise platform, Zoom was focused on that and had a lot of the security settings and configuration set to default off. As the pandemic hit and we have more and more consumer users and the new use cases such as birthday parties, services, et cetera, coming to Zoom. And again, we're very privileged and feel very honored to be able to help with that. But as those new users were coming on, many of you have heard this story before, but then we realized that we wanted to set many of those settings to default on. So for example, very, very early on, we set we set up the waiting room to default on, we set up the password to default on, and as you heard from Oded today, by the end of the month, that will be required to have one or the other, not just default on. In addition, we made the default for screen sharing for the host only, and in particular, that was important in the early days of the pandemic when we had so many schools and teachers and kids coming online. That was a feature that we did for them. In addition, we're reaching out, I think as you may have heard me say, we're reaching out to social media platforms. All kinds of platforms where those bad actors that we're speaking about share lists of previously publicly posted meeting IDs and passwords. So for example, if it's AA or if it's your church or your town hall, your political meeting, many times you want people to come and you may not know them all personally. And when you post those IDs and meeting IDs and passwords publicly, that really is an invitation for a bad actor to join. And so we are encouraging folks to try not to do that. That's really the best way to prevent a meeting disruption. But in addition, we do reach out to those social media platforms as I'm referring to, and we ask, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Reddits, et cetera. We try to work with those platforms and try to get those lists that encourage bad actors to come and pick up the meeting IDs. We try to get those sites taken down.
That was an excellent recap. Thank you, Lynn. Let's see, a question here for a few of my engineers on this panel. What facilities are available to allow students to work on programming projects in pairs or larger teams? If one member of a pair is using an IDE, can control of the IDE be ceded to the other member?
I'd be happy to jump in here. There's a lot of features in this area and a number that we're really excited about. Since pair programming was something that we've heavily looked into. So first and foremost, there is the screen sharing capability within Zoom. And more specifically, there is the multi-share capability. So we have seen individuals using this where each person can share their screen while viewing the other person's screen. Great for a dual monitor setup so that you can be looking at your view as well as the other person's view simultaneously. The other nice thing is with the screen sharing feature, you have the ability to request remote control of the other station and for that other person to then grant remote control. And at that point, they'll have access to the keyboard and mouse so that they can collaboratively work together on the one screen. And as soon as they're done collaborating, the person who's having their desktop controlled can with one click stop that remote control session. So it gives a lot of flexibility between being able to share, do the multi-share, so both individuals can see the other individual screen at once, as well as having that remote control feature.
I think to add on to what Brian is inside, and this feature, multi-screen sharing, and specifically built and designed to allow engineers to do like peer code reviewing and working on project together, especially have a dual monitor. That's even better, right? So you're meeting 5 engineers and assuming, see, Brandon is a manager, he can look at any other's screen. And also you also can view other screen, also can share screen. It's very flexible. Unfortunately, I think we did not promote that feature enough. A lot of people do not know that. That feature is awesome.
I'll work on that, Eric.
Yeah, you can try it out after this meeting.
Yeah, one of our favorites is in Zoom rooms, being able to do that, especially a 3-screen Zoom room where you can have multiple folks sharing on the different screens and being able to do a peer review that way.
Exactly. I did not do that recently, like 2 years ago, exactly. Sitting in the conference room and a dual monitor, look at every engineer's code. That's so awesome. So yeah.
That is awesome. Let's see. Would you consider providing attendee client platform and version information to meeting hosts to better help them, to help attendees with client-specific technical or usage issues during a meeting? So Oded,
you can actually go to the dashboard and look at the kind of meeting information. You can go to a live meeting or a past meeting, and as part of the information that shows in the kind of meetings dashboard, you can see the that specific information. You can also download reports and look at it with your own tools. So there are several options in our admin pages.
All right, here's a question. We're using Zoom to offer virtual office hours. How can we allow only users specifically invited to join a classroom meeting, making the meeting URLs user specific so it cannot be forwarded and shared?
We have a feature, meeting registration. Brendan is the expert. You want to share it?
Happy to. So the meeting registration capability lets you schedule a meeting and then do a registration list for it. So either you can upload a list there or have individuals self-register on a page. And then our system either allows it to be automatically approved or you can manually approve the folks on that list for them to be able to join. What happens is once they are approved, they'll receive an email with a individualized link that is just for them to be able to join into that session. So that way you have the ability to basically register, control who is there in the meeting, and then have each individual with an individualized link that is specific to them so that you have that authentication to close out that loop.
Great. Oded, can you talk about the limit of how many people could participate in webinars?
Yeah, in the webinar itself, you can have up to 50,000 participants, but you can also extend it by live streaming it to either YouTube or Facebook, or if you have your an organization that has their own live streaming, you can use that as well.
Great. We've been seeing some really big webinars right now. And also, if you are running a really large webinar, like these 40, 50,000, we do encourage you to reach out to us and use our professional services team, our events team, just to help make sure everything's set up and is going to run smoothly for you. Oded or Brendan, will there ever be a way for independent individuals and multiple organizations working together to co-host Zoom meetings? We have such use cases now for several situations in politics and churches.
Happy to jump in on this one. So one of the powers of Zoom is once folks are in a session, you actually have the ability to assign different roles to the participants. So you can have another individual that is in a completely separate account or doesn't have a Zoom account at all. But once they join into the meeting host can go to their participant panel and select that individual and say, make them a co-host. And at that point, they have all those abilities to help manage the session. And so that individual can join multiple sessions and always get promoted to that co-host role.
Thank you. Robert's asking for his synagogue. We're using Zoom currently for our Shabbat morning service. Our congregation is small and people want to hear one another. High holidays are less participatory, but for the high holidays, my members don't want to be locked into little boxes and have asked whether another platform would be better. How do you think I should answer them? Why should they prefer Zoom, in our opinion?
I'm assuming the question is around the size of the window of the video. And if that's the case, I recommend that they either use a laptop, but they can connect it to a large screen TV, and then the size will be bigger. If they really want to be really fancy about it, they can actually use our Zoom rooms, and they can actually download it from our website, the software itself, and there are kind of installation instructions there. With the Zoom rooms, what's nice about it is if you configure two large screen, you can even if you put two TVs and you know for the high holidays, you can prepare for that. And then you can actually span 25 and 25 across two screens, and that will keep it large from a screen size, but also from the number of participants.
Great. When a phone user goes into a waiting room, is there a way to identify their identity before letting them in?
So right now, yeah, you identify by the name, and we do understand that it is limited because people can put different names, and we will work on making it more advanced in the sense that you'll be able to chat with that person and ask them questions to really identify that they are the right people before you let them in. And we're thinking of other ideas like showing their video just for the host and other capabilities that will allow you to better identify someone in the waiting room.
Can I create a poll to reuse later in a different meeting? On the polling capabilities, Brendan?
So right now, when you create a poll, it is associated with that session. However, on a few parts of the platform, we do have the ability to do templates so that you can reutilize some settings.
Great. Eric, will there be a kids version of Zoom with special privacy and security features in mind?
Yeah, so yeah, we are thinking about that because we do offer the free service to K-12 schools. Essentially, we already did something, right? Enforce a lot of security features. Probably yes, we are going to discuss that. For the next several quarters, what we can do differently. I maybe offer a specific package just for the K-12 schools. Yeah, that's a great question.
Let's see, will there be an update where the co-hosts can also have rights? We have a lot of teaching assistants, et cetera, where the host is instructor and the assistant will be running things behind the scene.
Yeah, we received that request from schools. Right? Yes, that use case is known to us, and we actually spoke with several schools who asked for that feature, and we'll add more capability to the co-host, and it will be configurable. That's the direction we're taking.
Great. And Linda's asking, she just wants to clarify, starting July 19th, users will either have to have on a password set for the meeting or a waiting room, one or the other, and they cannot, in bold, turn both off. One or the other has to be enabled. And Linda, you've got it exactly right. So you have to have either passwords or rating rooms, or you can have both on, but you have to have at least something on. So you explained it right. You got it right there. Let's see, Eric, you said you'd like to keep both employees and customers happy. How are you going to do so?
Oh, that's a lot of things, right? You cannot just focus on one thing, right? So like during this pandemic crisis, you take our employees, for example, they all work very, very, very hard, right? Every day, like, serve all the users around the globe. And, being a leader, we got to think about what we can do differently for them, right? Like schedule some happy hours and think about doing a survey and make sure there's no anxiety, depression, mental health, and the mental resilience is something very important. We got to do more, right? Think about some ideas for them, and also another thing, just to listen. I always have all hands meeting, have a team meeting, just to understand employees' concerns. I do all we can to look at everything from employee perspective. If employee they are not happy, guess what? They are not going to do all they can to make customer happy, right? That is always the number one important thing. We also keep everything open and transparent. Solicit the feedback from all levels, and for every important feedback, we always take some actions to think about and care about our employees.
Let's see, can a host unmute someone remotely without the user having to consent to the unmuting?
Yes, so that's something that we've recently changed due to privacy reasons. But we understand that there are certain use cases that require that capability. For example, if a teacher is teaching, kids in a classroom, and what we plan to do is have like a special setting that allows the user to provide that consent for that specific host in the beginning of the meeting, and then that host will always have that capability to mute, unmute during the meeting itself and during other sessions. As long as that host received that consent, then they'll be able to do that during the meeting and even during other meetings as well for that specific user.
Great. And I'm getting a few questions. They're not security related, but we are getting a few. So Oded, I know that your children are very into theater, so maybe you can help answer these. Let's see, I'm using Zoom for dramatic productions. What is the best way to bring actors on and off the screen? And then there's related questions around, would there, for simultaneous sound, be able to happen on Zoom so more than one person can make sounds together for like music classes?
Yes, so for the first one, in terms of how to run a kind of a play on Zoom, there are kind of multiple ways to do it. One very creative way I've seen is providing the same background that is like a plain background for all the actors. And so it looks as if they're kind of in the same place. And some go fancy and kind of make a puzzle out of it so that they look as if they're kind of coordinated, and then kind of allow them to talk together in that sense. But remember, around the simultaneous sound, we only allow three people to talk at a time. And so that's kind of a limitation that you need to walk around for now. We are thinking of how to kind of take that limitation off. One specific use case that we are focusing on right now is hand clapping, so that we want to allow multiple people to kind of cheer and hand clap at the same time. And that limitation of 3 simultaneous sound inputs today kind of breaks that, and we'll have a solution soon for people who want to cheer others in a play or any other event.
I love it. I love it. And I also just encourage you to go watch how some of these professional troupes are doing this. There's Broadway is out there. They're using us on Zoom. They're getting super creative on how they're doing it. So if you do it, send it to us. We'd love to see it. Let's see. How does a post-event survey work? Brendan, you want to talk to that?
Happy to talk to that one. And there are a few different options when we're talking post-event. but one of the common use cases is folks being able to specify a URL, for example, to a platform that once the session ends, they would be directed to that platform to take a survey at that time.
Great. And then there's a question around people's display names. Is there a way that you can change them? Sometimes it's just their email address that's displaying.
So there are a number of options with the display name and how it appears in session. Naturally, within a session, there is the rename capability on the participants panel. But the other thing that we've seen a lot of people do, especially in the sort of business or enterprise environment, is tie the person's account with their SSO login. And as a administrator, you can actually say that an individual cannot change their name and that they can only use the information that comes from their identity provider. So at that point, every single time they log in, it will display what is in the official company directory.
That's a great tip. Thank you. Let's see. Clinton's asking if there's a co-host and the main host drops off from the meeting, does the co-host have the ability to continue the meeting or the call? And yes, they can. Odad, do you even want to talk about the new feature of when you leave a meeting?
Yeah, when you click on the leave itself, it will show the list of participants and allow the host to choose. If there is a co-host in the meeting, that co-host will be selected by default. And so you can just click one more time and that co-host will become the host automatically.
Great. Thank you. And I see we're at the top of the hour. I'd like to thank everyone for all of your questions and participating today. Thank you to my panelists. Max, congratulations on your paper being republished. Now it's the hard work of implementing. Eric, any final words?
Yeah, thank you all for your time. Keep sending us the feedback. We truly appreciate for your time. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.